Failure sucks, especially when you lose money. I lost about $7,000 on an acquisition that fell through. Everything was on the up and up. I checked all the boxes, didn't see any reason to feel that the deal wasn't going to happen. And then it just didn't work out. Welcome to the Legacy Builders podcast, where we are redefining generational wealth one story at a time. I'm your host, Mario Gonzalez Jr. And today I just want to talk through an acquisition that I was working on for a few months. All the stars were aligned, at least it seemed that way. And then the deal ultimately ended up falling through. Losing money or failure to any capacity sucks, especially when it's something that you've been working on for a while. But at least with my first acquisition failure, it made me take a few steps back. It really demotivated me for a little bit, especially after I put so much time and energy into it. So basically how it all started was I had been trying to find another acquisition, and I wanted to have an acquisition by the end of 2025, right? I had acquired Poop 911 February of 2025, and I was like, I want one more under my belt before the year closes. And I could not find anything in the Treasure Valley in the Boise metro area. And I'd reach out to my lender from time to time, just asking him, hey, what are my options as far as looking at a state? And he would always tell me that, you have to stay in the dog industry if you want to get 0% financing. So meaning I don't have to bring any money to the table, and I would get an SBA loan for 10 years and they would finance it 100% because I have the experience, and we could acquire that business as an expansion to my existing dog portfolio, right? And so I was like, all right, cool. So I kept looking in the Treasure Valley, and then he shot me a note one day and he was like, hey, Mario, you can now look out of state if you want in the dog vertical and still get 0% financing. So I don't have to bring any money down. I was like, awesome. So I start digging through different states, and I look back in my hometown in Austin, Texas, in their metro area, and I see a grooming business for sale. It is a 2-location operation, makes $750K in revenue, been in business for over 18 years. It's cash flowing $150, $160K seller's discretionary earnings, SDE. And I was like, man, this one is perfect. I can fly back home, visit my family and friends, write that off as, taxes. So I got tax advantage. I would cash flow at easily $1,500 to $2,000 a month. 50-50 partnership with my parents who were going to put up $100K, right? So my thought process was like, that already fits in my dog portfolio. It cash flows immediately. It's in my hometown. It's a long-standing business. I know the dog business very well, and it just made sense, right? So it'd be a partnership, and I could use that in my portfolio as, hey, Mario Lifetime Legacy Holdings is a multi-state operator in the dog service industry. So ran it by the lender. Lender was like, perfect. This has legs, no pun intended. And we started going through the motions. I started submitting all my documents for underwriting. Didn't see any areas of concern as far as hiccups. So we start going through the underwriting process. Now, keep in mind, there was a government shutdown, and this particular lender had gone through a different financial institution, right? But the first time that I worked with him, we acquired Poop 911 together. Everything was going well. The level of engagement I noticed was a little different this time. Like, it would take a long time to get answers back. So that was number one. That's kind of a number one red flag. And I'm walking through the whole process because it's really important to know that no single deal is structured the same. Just because you have one successful acquisition doesn't mean the next one's going to go, through 100% without any failure. But nonetheless, so that was kind of the first red flag, is like, I wasn't getting quick responses like I was used to with the last acquisition. It got to a point where even the broker that I was working with on this deal, who was working on the seller's behalf, he started getting irritated because we had discussed a close date. We were all working towards that close date. I had never heard anything back from the lender in terms of there could be hiccups or we might need to reschedule the close date. Okay. And he comes back. It turns out that, on the week of, he tells me the valuation hasn't even been ordered. He tells me that we're going to need additional paperwork from the landlords because I had to sign 2 leases. And at that point, I had already hired somebody, an operator for one of the locations, because it was a 2-location shop. One of the locations already had a manager in place. It was running by itself. But the other location, it was owner operator. So she was paying herself kind of a manager salary. And so I had to replace that operator, right? And that would have cost me about $50 to $60K a year. So I go through a very diligent hiring process. I hired the perfect operator, and everything is lined up to close. I think it was the beginning of December. And I get that call from the banker, from the lender, and he's like, yeah, we're going to have to push it back. So I'm frustrated at this point. The broker is frustrated at this point, and so are the sellers, as you could imagine, because they had already gone through this process before and the deal fell through. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make sure it closes, right? So I felt like I had an obligation to not only close the deal because, of course, I want the cash flow. I strive on building things, but I also wanted to live up to my promise because they were ready to move on to that next stage of their life. And so we get the call from the lender, and he's like, yeah, we have to push it back. And I was like, well, crap, when and why? And he sends us a list of all of these things that we have to work on, documents that he needs. Again, he tells me that the valuation still hadn't been ordered. So I was like, crap, man, I don't know what to do. And so and for me, like when it comes to turning around paperwork, I'm quick. I'm like, tell me what you need. I'll get it to you tonight or tomorrow, To add another layer of complexity to it, since I do live out of state, originally he told me that I had to make somebody 5% owner. I was like, cool, I'm going to bring my dad in as 5% owner because he has management experience and he's going to put in 10% down if we need to. Originally, again, wanted this 0% down so I didn't have to bring any money out of my own pocket. So make my dad 5% owner. I go through the SBA form 413. I am filling out all these documents, and then he comes back. He's like, well, if we make your dad 5% owner, then I can't give you 100% financing. So I'm like, crap. And he's like, one way we can get around it is if you make one of the existing managers in place 5% owner. So the issue with that was that the sellers did not want to alert the employees that the business was for sale because it already fell through one time. After this experience, I could 1,000% see why they wouldn't want to alert any of the employees, because shit happens, right? Things go sideways. You never know. So we resolve that issue. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put 10% down. My parents are going to finance it. They're going to be, 50 partners with me and kind of shadow investors or whatever. And so he was like, fine, we can handle that. We get down to the wire. It's the week of after the deal was already like rescheduled for a closing date. And naturally the broker's getting irritated. He's trying to curb the sellers. I'm trying to curb the broker and play the middleman, reassure him that everything's going well. And myself, I'm stressed out. I'm full of anxiety, ball of anxiety. I'm running through every different single scenario you can think of with ChatGPT. And at this point, I feel guilty because I hired an operator, right? And I put her on a 4-hour-a-day plan where she's learning the industry. She's mystery shopping, calling competitors. And I'm like, hey, I know you have bills to pay. You turned out another job. I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars or X amount of hours per week until we close. And she would consistently communicate. She would have been such a badass operator, right? She would have helped me scale that business. And so anyways, I'm paying her. So I'm already starting to lose money. I put in $5K of earnest money at this point. I'm not getting back. I've hired an operator. I've gone through the whole process of of establishing an LLC, opening a bank account. So I'm about $6,000 in, and I'm like, that's money I'm not going to get back probably at this point if this deal falls through, right? But we're still keeping positive. And then I get a call from the lender one day, and he's like, I have not so good news for you. And this is 2 days before the rescheduled close date. And he's like, unfortunately, the broker went above my head to my boss, and then my boss went to his boss. They put the deal under a microscope. And since you're out of state and you don't live there and you don't have a majority ownership present in Texas, we're not going to be able to qualify the loan. My heart sank a little bit, but I kind of knew what was coming already because it had just been such a shit show of an acquisition. And I told, or he called the broker. The broker was like, I understand. Broker and the sellers had been really lenient and waiting until I can find another lender. So I get in touch with another lender. And I tell them straight up, hey, this is the situation. I'm looking for financing. I just want to let you know what happened with the last situation was I'm out of state. So I want to make sure that when we propose, another SBA loan, we'd lead with that. Took her a good solid week, and this was around Christmas time. And they did the review, did the underwriting. She says, hey, you're a really strong candidate, but unfortunately, we can't approve the loan because you are out of state. But keep this in mind for other acquisitions in your territory because you can get approved for anything you want, right? So she called the broker. Broker's like, I think 2 or 3 days before that, he says that the seller's willing to sell their finance for 10% down. I'm like trying to scrape my pockets, figure out what I can piece together. And I just, shot the broker a text message this morning, and I was like, hey, man, this is just not going to happen. Like, I can't get the financing for it. We can get creative, but if the sellers are not willing to do more than 10%, they'd have to do like 20 or 30% for me to make this thing work. And so we're officially in the process of dissolving the deal, So it was a huge letdown for me on my part. And I lost $7,000. I got demotivated for a couple of weeks there because I was gung-ho. I have a huge vision board, and it has everything mapped out with my dog training business, with the poop scooping company. I was like, I'm going to add a groomer to my portfolio, and I just didn't want to do anything for a week. I was still in the background, kind of on autopilot, trying to see what I can do to keep it structured and keep it together, and just no dice. So I had to fire the operator that I hired. Just let her know that I'm sorry. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. I know you got to pay the bills. I completely understand if you got to look somewhere else. Now I have to go through the process of dissolving the LLC. I already canceled my Amex credit card this morning. I have to go close my business account tomorrow and just take the loss. Now I can write it off as an expense for the portfolio company for, the 2025 tax year, but I'm out about $7,000. I don't have any cash flow because I was looking forward to the cash flow, and I'm back to square one. So now I'm hunting for deals again. I'm back on it, buy, bid, sell all the time, looking for off-market deals. I do see some that come across my eye from time to time. I start digging into it. I'm like, crap, this just doesn't make sense for me right now. And I feel like it's a dopamine hit. I'm looking for a quick win, but ultimately I know that I need to just be patient. And when the right deal comes along, I can strike. I reached out to a lender on LinkedIn. She says I have a really strong portfolio. I'm a really strong candidate for any loan that I want. So I'm just lining up the pieces right now. So that way, when the next deal does come along, I'll just be able to pounce on it, and then it won't have any hesitations. So the key for me, at least at this point, is I need to find something in my local market. Once I have a stronger portfolio and I can find a really good operator out of state, then I'll be more confident in being able to apply for an SBA loan again. But even then, I hear that SBA loans, they're looking for more, borrowers who want to actually operate the business. That is not me. I want to be absentee as I can be. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to look at it. I want to hire the key players and then have them operate that business for me. And I just want to collect the check. They say there's no such thing as, 100% passive income. I think there is. I don't fall into that category. I think that if there's a way you can mastermind something or build something in a certain way, you can have anything you want, and the sky is the limit. So, if you learned anything from this, do your homework, due diligence, understand that things are going to happen. You can't control everything, and you just have to learn from your experiences and your failures and learn how to fail forward. So thank you for listening. If you found any value in this, please be sure to share it with your friends and family or folks who are going through acquisitions or want to build that generational wealth. That's really the whole idea behind sharing these stories with you, the wins and also the losses, because I think the losses are really important to learn how to fail forward. And if you can find somebody out there that has gone through it themselves, then make sure that you schedule a one-on-one time with them, because it is certainly valuable. So till the next one, we will see you then.